So the modular that was used was this one, which is here behind me, more or less. There was a few small changes to it, but pretty much it stayed intact. Pretty much the whole top row is more or less identical to as it was when I did scenes from a high-rise as well. So there's a whole bunch of mutable instruments modules at the top. There's a braids, which is running Tim Church's Bees in Trees alternate firmware for it, which was particularly useful. Several pieces use the internal Turing machine that's been added to the Bees and Trees firmware, and there's the Clouds granular processor, which is also running the alternate firmware, which is Matthias Puech's Clouds Parasite, which was used a lot, particularly the additional mode with the reverb, the Oliverb as it's called. Next to that we have an ALM SPG, and that basically allows me to run the signal from the modular out into the Line 6 Pod X3 here, and then back in, process it with that, and then back into the modular. And so I used a lot of amp simulations, fuzz pedals and stuff like that, to really dirty up some of the sounds. Down the bottom is a Pittsburgh modular time runner. Next to that is the Microbe modular meta sequencer, which was bought fairly early on during the initial sessions and was used on a bunch of things. I often use that just to create random pitch sequences with. Next to that is the Make Noise Fix Filter and Rix Mix combo. Next to that is my Harvestman double Andorra, which is used extensively. It's one of my main modulation sources. I particularly love sending a CV to the CV select things and having the different envelopes cycle through. I've also got the Pink Meets Orange EEPROM, so it has the initial from Pink Noise, which has the initial set of waveforms for modulation plus an additional set, and that was used a lot to create some more unusual modulations and stuff. And then next to that we've got the Maleko Mix 4, which is a basic mixer, and an ALM Busy Circuit Stinky's Tycho, which was brought in right at the end and only used for overdubs, and finally a Pittsburgh Outs for just going out into an audio interface, which is a little Native Instruments one, into the laptop running Ableton Live. I ended up doing 4 or 5 additional tracks of modular through the piece, and then I went on to additional percussion stuff, starting off with something really obvious like my old rivet cymbal that I had when I started off as a drummer. I had a 1950s Premier kit, and these cymbals by Zinn were Premier's own cymbals that came with the kit. The kit's long gone. I've still got the snare somewhere, but I kept the cymbal because I thought, A, it's kind of unusual. It's got, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the bell is not round, it's slightly squared off. It's a bit dented. It's got a very unusual sound, probably because it's quite cheaply made, but it really has quite a nice sizzle with the rivets and the overtones of it. It's just unlike any other rivet sort of China cymbal that I've ever had, and because it was so unique and probably isn't worth very much anyway, I just hung on to it, and it was nice to have a chance to use it. And that's used a lot in the score, sometimes just to as an additional tail on certain synthesizer sounds or pads or special effects. And another percussion instrument was this very old tambourine which belonged to my late father, I think from his days in the Air Force. It's ancient, the skin is actually worn in places, but it is perfect for tambourine rolls. It's the best tambourine I've ever had for that, probably because the skin, it was probably rough once, but now it's smooth like vellum, and it's got quite a nice resonant sort of sound, and I don't know whether you can see them, but the ringlets of the tambourines are just knackered. They're broken, they're torn, so they don't really jingle anymore, they sort of clank like rusty chains. It has a very distinctive sound. I've used it a lot. I used to use it when I played live with Camilla Mathias as well. I used household objects. So, and two of the stranger ones were these. I hope you can see them. This is a whisk from my wife's combi mixer. I put it on the desk where it can be resonating a little and pluck it. This is probably unknown to anybody outside Switzerland. This is a Spätzle or Knöpfli pan or grater. Basically, Knöpfli is flour that you then put into boiling water and make little tiny dumplings out of it. And you can see it's got holes in it. And you put the flour on it, you sort of press it through like a grater, like a cheese grater, and then the little nodules of flour go through, and you put it into the boiling water, and you get these little dumplings. It's very tasty. Anyway, the pan, which is made out of quite hefty, it's fairly solid, made out of aluminium, had a really nice sound. Almost like a gong or something, or a little bell, like a gamelan bell. And what I really liked was the holes. When you struck it and moved your hand in front of it, and you got a sort of wah-wah effect. So, I don't know how well that's being picked up on the camera. And that, heavily processed, is the really sort of loud sort of gong sound that sounds sort of like a gong and a klaxon at the very beginning of the piece.